Hello everyone, this is the BabyHawk R Pro from Emax. Featuring RS11062 motors, Emax Rush 2.5-inch props, Caddx branded Emax camera. It's a Caddx S1 with camera protection. The flight stack is the Emax Mini Magnum F4 II Lite, featuring a power switchable VTX up to 200 milliwatt. It has an MMCX connector, F4 flight controller with an OSD, 28 4-in-1 BL Heli S ESC. It comes with a D8 receiver, camera tilt 20 to 70 degrees, XT30 for your battery connection, capacitors out here now too, a rubber pad for your battery, 2 LEDs, a buzzer, motor post to motor post, I'm getting 120 millimeters, bottom plate's 3 millimeters, arm thickness at its narrowest point is 6 millimeters, 3 screws per motor, mine weighs 92.7 grams. I think it's supposed to come with 2 full sets of props, but I only got 7. It comes with a Caddx controller to change the settings on your camera, a baggie full of spare screws and nuts, comes with a fold-out manual, you also get a manual on the Caddx camera, and it comes in a pretty small box. So let's start with the batteries I used. These ones you see on the left, these are the batteries that I flew this with. I, of course, have multiples of these. I just brought out one of each. This is the black label from Indestructible Quads. We have the Race Day Quad series, the G&B. This is labeled Eris, but I believe it to be the Infinity battery. So the flight time that you've seen in the video was not short by any stretch, because if you look, my camera angle is kind of aggressive. Maybe this is horizon. I measured it, and oddly enough, this is where I landed, and it came in at 57 degrees. So that's actually more than I usually fly, and that's a good thing, because typically I have to adjust down. I can't adjust up. In this case, I think I kind of made a mistake when I was adjusting the camera, and then I got out flying and I kind of forgot about it. but it was enjoyable and I didn't bother to change it. I just kept flying it like that. Before we get too far, I want to cover one thing that may catch you out a bit. Getting your battery in and out can be a little bit of a challenge depending upon how much heat shrink or how much heat was applied to the heat shrink. If I can get my camera to give us a nice clear view, you'll probably notice that there's a little bit of a bowing inwards due to that capacitor squeezing the plastic. And I did find that to actually make getting my batteries in and out a little bit more difficult than I was used to. So you may find that you want to loosen that up, maybe use electrical tape so it can relax. You do want to secure the capacitor. My understanding is capacitors are generally better closer to the ESC, but a number of people really didn't like how that on the original BabyHawk was hanging out over here off the side, so they moved it here. They apparently feel strongly that the capacitor is needed. Typically we use capacitors to clean up voltage spikes so that your video is a bit cleaner, so that will help maintain that FPV view that we all like. A few things about the props. I have never flown these props before. I haven't tested them on anything else, so I really can't speak to their efficiency. You might want to look up efficiency testing online to see what they show, but I thought that at the very least they were hardy. I didn't have any problems with breakages whenever I did bend one back. I think there was one I did bend pretty heavily. I think it might have been this one back here. I just bent it back. They've got some natural looking bends to them. They're kind of a peculiar looking, kind of almost dinosaur like. I'm thinking of a pterodactyl or something, you know, with wings. That it kind of looks like that to me. So they're very, very unique. You know, I got in the flight video that you saw, the full flight, I think it was 2 minutes and 16 seconds or something like that. I do have a number of other flights, and I'm probably showing you one right here, that come in closer to 235, 245. And again, I'm flying with this same camera angle. It just, in my particular case, depends on how many punch outs I'm doing, how many times I'm flying over the house, how many times I'm making hairpin turns. You know, basically throttle management or throttle use in your flying style. It's going to vary from pilot to pilot, so keep that in mind when you're watching this video. I tend to be pretty hard on batteries and pretty short on flight time. It's just how I like to fly. It's not that I'm trying to impress anybody. It's just my enjoyment. That's where it comes from. I like to go fast. I like to go near things. I like to go around them. And then I like to, actually when I do a punch out, it's the moment where I kind of relax and I just kind of coast through the air. And then you come back down and you do it all around really fast again and again and again and again. So another thing I want to draw your attention to, and these are improvements that they made. Basically, they listened to the community and they made some changes. You might remember on the original, we had troubles with the ESC, and the soft mounting would come all the way down to the carbon and it would short out and you'd fry an ESC. Many, many pictures of that going around. They've changed some things, like this right down here at the very, very bottom. That's rubber. But up here at the top, hopefully you can see this clearly. I don't know if I have good enough lighting. This is actually a nylon nut. So I think we shouldn't have issues with, let me see if I can make it go down on this side and get light on it. This is going to be a little bit of an exercise here, I think. Well, dang it, I can't get my bodgy fingers in there. But you can see we still have got soft mounting involved there. Hopefully you can hear that right there. That's plastic. And this is, when I hit it square and I don't get the carbon or the plastic, you can't hear it. But this down here is rubber. So they obviously they saw where there was a flaw in the original, and they've made a correction, and that's a great thing. When it comes down to this flight stack, it has all the features that you would expect, and it's got a few unexpected ones. This thing has a ton of UARTs. You've got camera control, you've got VTX control. Pretty much after you get this thing set up and ready to fly at the field, which isn't much because it's already PID tuned as well, you put your rates on, you charge some batteries. If you want to change something on the machine, you just set it down on the ground and use your goggles. You really don't have a use for the buttons. There is one use for the button, and that is if you want to use some of those bands that the FCC doesn't allow. My understanding to do that is you hold and press down on the button. You can see here right on the side of the VTX, and you plug in power. You then will see a U on the digital display. That will mean it's unlocked. At that point, I believe we can disconnect the battery, replug it in, and we can use those other bands that aren't allowed by FCC. I don't recommend that, but I know that question is likely to come up, so that's information for you to use and possibly get in trouble with. Good luck. The MMCX, I know that some people will really jump for joy on that. That's a nice addition. I do wish the antenna was a bit shorter, and I kind of wish it came straight out. I don't see a real good purpose of why that connector doesn't come straight out. You can see there that I used a zip tie. just around this little void here so I could get my antenna kind of secured. So it did have the possibility that it could get into a prop depending upon what it did. It is nice, thick coaxial antenna wire, and I think it might be okay, but if you're doing much acrobatic flight and you're doing anything real quick and aggressive, you may find that your VTX antenna gets chopped up. I've got a nice loud buzzer. It's right in here. I pointed to it in the quick specs. And we've got that VTX is kind of a half board. It's kind of unique. So you've only got two mounts to that, but it's half sized again. And then we have the same D8 receiver that we've seen in the previous BabyHawks. Down here on the bottom, I mentioned it the quick roll, but again, give you another look. We've got 3 screws for each motor. We've got an opening here. We've got mounts for our camera holder. We've got 4 for our flight stack, and then we've got 1 at the rear to mount the rear of the canopy. Canopy design is actually quite a bit different. Let me grab one of the originals. So here's the original BabyHawk R. You can see I've got a little 3D printed piece down here to protect the ESCs from shorting, but this is give you a little bit of a look of the original canopy, and I much prefer the new one. It is much more sleek. It is much more, I almost think of it like an alien design. I think like the alien head. This part kind of reminds me of that. We've got ventilation up here. The other one had ventilation, but I just think overall, as far as the canopy goes, it's just a bit more stylish, and it also opens up the camera angle that you can use. Previously, if you remember, you also had a limit going down on this one, and I don't recall what that was, but I have a sneaking suspicion it was more than 20 degrees, and that's why they had to go to a smaller lens size in order to be able to get down to close to 20 degrees. If you're just starting your FPV journey, you might be able to fly without having to have an aggressive pitch, because even some top pilots don't fly with much over 20 degrees. I don't want to quote anybody, but I think like Steele and Drib and some of those guys. I know Stingy flies a little bit more camera angle, but so you don't have to fly fast. You can fly any way you want, just go out and have fun. But as far as this machine goes, I do like the upgrades in the canopy. The mount is slightly different as well. You can see on this side it's more of a just kind of a, I don't know what this material is. I'm hesitant to call it plastic because that sounds like it's fragile and cheap. I don't know what this material is, but whatever they've used is kind of a traditional design as far as we would see with the metal brackets that we get with a lot of these cameras, but it's a little bit thicker. It's also hanging out over the edge a little bit here as well, versus we had more of a jaw originally. It would kind of scoop out. It kind of looks like a mouth a little bit there, but that gives us a little bit of a comparison to the original. I was actually pointing to the wrong side when I referred to the capacitor that people didn't like on the original BabyHawk, so it was on the same side as the battery lead. My apologies. As far as the tune goes, I think what you'll find is the tune is kind of middle of the road. It's not meant to be tuned to the hilt. That way it will meet more pilots' kind of desires, and they can tweak it out as it needs to. It is running Betaflight 3.5, so you have all those additional features, the feed forward, all the different things that they've brought into it, and they've customized all of those things on this. They've spent what I presume is a great deal of time with a pilot tuning this thing out. I did fly it with the stock tune. I did change it to my rates, of course. I changed the OSD to what I like, of course. I changed the modes and the switches to be what I'm used to. One thing that I noticed is that the minimum throttle, I believe it was set at 1250 or 1200, and that really surprised me. On my first flight, like I did a hover, like a traditional maiden, just make sure the thing wasn't going to freak out on me, set it back down, bring the goggles down to the eyes, and take off. And I was really surprised. I thought, oh no, this is not going to be good, because I was at 50% throttle just to hover the thing, and then I tried to do a punch out. I thought maybe it had some sort of dramatic throttle curve that I didn't notice previously, and I did a punch out and it was pretty tame. I was like, oh, this isn't good. They're not heading in the right direction. And then I went back and looked at the Betaflight, and the minimum throttle was at 1250 and the max throttle was at 1900. So not a lot of throttle resolution in there. So if you get yours, check that. That may be something that's specific to my model. I don't know. They also have a CLI dump for the Betaflight, the 3.5 that's on there. So if you happen to lose that, just go to emax-usa.com. They may have websites also set up for other countries, but that's the one I'm looking at now. So if you lose your tune for some reason, or you try to go to a future version of Betaflight and find out that just doesn't work for you for whatever reason, you can revert back to Betaflight 3.5 and not have to worry about having your own backup. Emax has you covered with a CLI dump that you can just copy into the CLI, hit enter, type save, hit enter again, you're all set. You're back to square one, just like it came out of the box. The last thing I want to cover is the fact that it's 3S only. With the 3-inch version of the BabyHawk, we did see where you could run 3S and it also ran 4S, so it performed better on 4S. I think I'm pretty happy, one, that they came out with this version, that it's 2.5. I don't think we're going to see a 2-inch, and I don't think we're going to see a 3-inch. I think that was a bit of an experiment, and those sizes may have cannibalized themselves, or people were just buying aftermarket kits, and maybe as a business, the Emax didn't necessarily like that. I think 2.5 is a sweet spot for micros. Unfortunately, multi-GP and the racing community kind of needs to catch up if they want to involve micros in their racing, which I would sure like. Not that I'm a racer, but I'm sure many of you would join your races if you had an opportunity to fly your favorite micro out there. So hopefully we'll find multi-GP and other race communities. Maybe your local chapter already has made up their own rules and regs for a classification for micros, but I think 2.5 is kind of that spot where it still performs really well, but it's still small and a lot safer than the 5 and larger inch quads out there. So if you already have a bunch of 3S batteries, you don't have to worry about needing a bunch of 4S batteries to get the performance you're looking at. The flight that you saw, again, I flew it with these batteries right there, and you can pick those up anywhere you like. You'll find those, of course, from Race Day Quads, Indestructible Quads, various retailers. You can get these two from Banggood, Gearbust, Amazon. You could probably get these from Good Venture Drones. They carry a lot of micro stuff. So, and you can also buy this quad. You can get it directly from Emax. You can get it from, you probably can find it off of Amazon if you're an Amazon shopper and you want to get one real quick. I'll put links down below to the various places I can find it. I also heard that Pyroflip had a huge shipment come in. Race Day Quads will surely get it. Get FPV will surely get it. I'm sorry to our international friends. I'm not very familiar with the hobby shops in other countries, but you may want to look around and just kind of search for the Emax BabyHawk R Pro if you're interested in a model like this. Now that we're all the way to the end, only the truest diehards of the channel surely are still here, and you probably have that one last question. The question that's going to come up time and time again is, where do I rate this as far as the micros that I flow? First, the disclaimer, I have not flown all the micros in the 2.5 inch category. The one I'm thinking of off the top of my head is the one that came from Diatone not that long ago. I flew the 2-incher. They did not send me a 2.5 inch, nor did I buy a 2.5 inch. So that's one I can think off the top of my head that I did not buy. Where I would put this in flight performance is definitely in the top 5 of the micros that I have flown. You know, the SkyStars, that's running 4S, that really had mind-boggling performance. I think some other top performers that would probably be in that same category would be the HGLRC Hornet 120, the Aurora Mini Fight was also another one I was thinking of. There might be a couple others in there. That's why I put it in kind of the top 5, because I'm sure in the moment there's a couple of them that I'm not thinking of that might be 6 and this one might be 3 or vice versa, but it gives you an idea of where I see this at. Now, where it starts to push itself from whatever number it is in the top 5 to near the top is the feature set. We have yet to see a micro with this sort of rich feature set. We've got camera control. We've got the VTX control with smart audio. We've got a buzzer. We've got an LED. We've got the OSD still. We've got a current sensor built into it. We've got all the features. It checks all those boxes as far as features go. And if you want to see them in the OSD, you can turn them on. Or if you don't, you can turn them off. It's as easy as just, you know, clicking the slider off. But outside of those features, then additionally some value that you might perceive in this is the company itself. The company is actively pursuing this market. They're actively going from what used to be Emax as an electronics or a component manufacturer into a whole quad manufacturer. They've had 5-inchers, they've now had various micros, and they seem to be, from that standpoint, invested in the success of their products, which means you'll be able to get assistance from either the company itself. By the way, JD Mora from Emax sent me this, and thank you, JD, if you're out there. I appreciate it. Or just purely out of the popularity of the product, there'll be more people out there flying this and other variants that you can get assistance from. So to give you an example, say you do go to a future version of Betaflight and you find that you have troubles with PID tuning that version, whatever the changes in filters and how it responds, you could very likely find someone else with the exact same quad, running the exact same motors, running the exact same props, and they've got a PID tune for you that you can just use. If PID tuning is not your thing, or you're struggling at that point, you'll be able to find someone out there on the internet, or maybe even in your local community, that's got one of these and that can help you with either a PID tune or another issue, diagnosing whether you've got a motor or a prop issue or what have you. And that can be a huge bonus depending upon whether you're in an active flight community or if you're someone alone like yourself that has to reach out to companies to find out what your course of action is to get your machine back in the air. I think additionally, one thing, I don't want to seem like this is a hard press, but this is the reality of most of our micros coming from China and having essentially no support to them. For 90% of the market, there's just no support. Once you get it, your only recourse is to deal with the retailer, and that can be a difficult and tedious process. If you get one of these and it's DOA out of the box, I have more confidence that if that happens, you're going to be able to go directly back to the company and you'll get a resolution that you'll be satisfied with, whether that's a new component or a whole new machine, or maybe even your local hobby shops are carrying some of these things. We know that U.S. vendors are carrying this. The last thing is that it comes in closer to that $170 price mark. So that's about $20 more than we saw the previous iteration, the BabyHawk R. So the Pro version and all of its features do come at a cost. There are improvements I think they can still make to this quad, and one is the battery lead itself. I do wish that they would be more aware, or they would take into consideration the length that they need to the battery lead to where we can secure it to at the very least an arm. We don't have a post nearby, so we can't really secure our battery lead to a post with a zip tie. I would prefer that they just handle that right from the manufacturer. That way people who are getting into FPV don't happen to miss that little nugget, or your first flight, because of your excitement on your new quad, you run out and have a battery ejection and you tear the pads right off the ESC, and now you're looking at having to order more parts, because that's kind of on us to a degree. We got a working quad and we went out and crashed it, now it doesn't work, so how do we fix it? But I would like to see them do that. I think they could also improve the battery strap. Of course, we don't see a lot of micro battery straps that are all that great. Myself, I prefer the ones with a metal buckle just because they're a little bit smaller. We could also see some sort of tactile surface on the inside to help squeeze our battery and keep it where it needs to be. Those are relatively minor things, but they're still things that could be improved. The only other thing I can think of to improve would be to take this VTX antenna and either include or give us an option when ordering of going to a different kind, because I know there's a number of pilots out there that won't want to use a linear or a whip antenna, and you'll want some, whether it's a Pergoda or a circular polarized, to give us ordering options. I mean, it's easy enough to switch out. It's an MMCX connector. It plugs in, it just pulls right out. But to give us another option in ordering to get an antenna of our choice would be good. And if they could incorporate some sort of way of securing the antenna either into the canopy or some other mechanism to where it wouldn't fuss with the design and the look quite so much, I think that's another area that they could then elevate their product a little bit further. So it's not a perfect product by any means, but as far as the feature set goes and the performance goes, it is very, very good. I can't imagine anybody would be unhappy with it, but you need to do your homework, do your research. This one's dead simple. Push the button in to bind your radio, set your modes in beta flight, make sure you've got your arming switch set up, charge the batteries, go fly and have fun. In short, I think it's a good successor. Good job, Emax. I think it's going to be another hot selling product. Hopefully there's a huge market still out there because it's near and dear to my heart. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise about this quad, please let me know in the section down below. I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.